Hello, I'm Alice Hutchinson. I'm the owner of Byrd's Books, an independent bookstore in Bethel, Connecticut, and I'm honored to host these wonderful poets for the first night of our spring poetry series. This first night is the only episode in the series virtually on Crowdcast. Night 2 on April 22nd, Earth Day, will be hosted both in person and on Zoom. The 2 May afternoon episodes will be fully in person and filmed for YouTube. This seemed the easiest way to ease back into our curious world, and poetry will help us get there. If you want to revisit this episode or share it with a friend, you can go to Byrd's Books Crowdcast channel and watch the recording at any time. Just follow the same link you used tonight. Tonight, Byrd's Books hosts reading by Leslie Bulion, Marilyn Nelson, Gail, Carson, Levine, Alan Katz, Susan Hood, and Rick Magee. Each poet will be introduced individually and then read for 8 to 10 minutes. When they all finish, we will have a round robin at the end where we hear one last poem from each poet in the order they read initially. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Crowdcast, many of you have discovered the chat to the right of your screen. Please feel free to comment at any time that you like. There is also a green link at the bottom of the page that links you to the Byrd's Books Spring Poetry Series page, where you can purchase the author's books while supporting the store and this program. Now, a little bit about our first poet. Leslie Bulion's 8 award-winning illustrated poetry collections include Spy Coup, and I thought I had it ready to show you because I love this book. A Clutter of Short Verse on 8 Legs, Amphibian Acrobats, Superlative Birds, Leaf Litter Critters, Hey There, Stink Bug. Leslie's graduate science background and her years as a school social worker inform both her poetry and her science-infused novels for young readers. About her newest books, Serengeti, Plains of Grass, her publisher says Leslie Bulion, a virtuoso science poet, has created a portrait of rainy season on East Africa's southern Serengeti plain, offering young readers a compelling look at an ecosystem in motion. Using a series of interconnected verses inspired by East African Swahili poet form, the Utendi, Bulion's cadences and rhythmic lines mimic the web of life in the Serengeti, following the great migration of wildebeest, zebras, and others into then out of the vast short grass plain. The book is not out yet, so I don't have a cover of it, but I'm hoping that Leslie will give you a chance to see it. Welcome to the screen, Leslie Bulion.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you for inviting me. This is really an honor to be here with these other wonderful poets and share from my brand new book, Serengeti. It published on March 1st. We're having some book supply issues, so I'm going to be reading from my F&G. Fold and Gather, for people who aren't familiar with that, is without the hardcover in it. So I'm going to give a little background before I read it. More than 20 years ago, my family visited East Africa at the invitation of my husband's sister, who was teaching on a Fulbright Fellowship in Tanzania. And among many amazing experiences that we had in cities and in towns and with families and with friends, we did get to go for a week of safari, about a week, and 2 days in the Serengeti, which made such an incredibly deep impression on me. Looking out over those vast grassy plains reminded me of looking out at the ocean, where you know it's teeming with life and so much is going on, and it's so much below the surface where you can't even see. And so years later, I returned to the Serengeti with my research mind and my poetry heart to explore it again. And now I'm going to share it with you. It is finally here, almost in my hands. So to share this moving ecosystem, I use the rhythms of the Serengeti, the seasons and the rains, bringing the migrating herds into and out of the Serengeti shortgrass plains, interacting with the resident animals, and the movement of food energy through the food web, from the grass to the herbivores, to the insectivores, to the carnivores, to the apex predators, to the recyclers, dung, and back to grass again. So the book begins with kind of an expository story, this seasonal migration. Now in Spaiku, as Alice held up, and each of my other science poetry books, I use a lot of humor and I use a variety of poetic forms. But in this book, I use interconnected stanzas that I adapted after the Swahili form, the utendi. And it's a 4-line stanza. The first 3 lines end in partial rhyme. And then the 4th line is a refrain, a repeat. And in this case, the repeat is grass, which is the basis of this open plain ecosystem. So each stanza connects to the next as we move through the food web. And I include spare expository notes on each spread, which I'm not going to be reading tonight. I'm going to read it as I very first wrote it, as one long interconnected poem, stanza by stanza. But before I start, I just want to explain 3 things that I won't be explaining in the expository notes. And actually, I recommend reading the book this way, reading it through stanza by stanza, and then going back and reading the stanzas again with the expository notes. But I'm going to just do the poem tonight. And I'm going to say the word copy, which is K-O-P-J-E, which is kind of a heap of boulders that get exposed in the Serengeti Plains through weathering, kind of like an outcropping, and rock hyrax, which are small furry mammals that live in and around those copies. And then a dik-dik is a tiny antelope that's about the size of a beagle. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And open my PowerPoint. Start the slideshow, and you should be seeing the cover of the book. So here's the cover of Serengeti Plains of Grass. It's a beautiful wraparound cover illustrated by Becca Statlander to give you the idea of the vastness of this space. And now I'll start reading the poem. I'm not going to show all of the spreads, but just some of them. Here's the first one. Parched soil bed of volcano ash, roots asleep in a tangled mesh. 1 drop, 2, then downpours rush. First rains wake new blades of grass. Hoofbeats thunder under blazing sun. A great migration toward the plain. Grazing zebras first to begin. Clear away taller, tougher grass. Wildebeests feast on shorter swards. Oxpecker birds are stowaboards. Gnu's trample roots in shaggy herds, spreading manure for growing grass. Plains are cropped where wildebeests grazed, leaving tender herbs exposed. Low ground growth is nimbly used. Fleet gazelles nibble new-mown grass. Acacia leaf buds brush the sky. Thorns stand guard, warn, keep away. Lie the rugged tongues let giraffes enjoy, chewing cud, stilt walking through the grass. Bathed by rains, Serengeti blooms, sun-faced yellows and scarlet flames. Waste paper flowers on tiny stems, scattered as handfuls across the grass. Butterflies flutter at nectar wells. Whistling thorns host ant patrols. Hoofed herds stir up grasshopper gales. Cattle egrets feast above the grass. Ancient boulder heaps mark the plains. Copies shelter hyrax clans. Rock rabbits gobble freshest greens, dart home from perilous open grass. Copies shadow, moon-washed night, dik-dik's pair in a life duet, hind-legged stretch for leaves and fruit, elfin hiders in the grass. Mating termites ride the wind, mate, nest, then chew chaff underground. Workers raise mounds of clay and sand, towers sail in a sea of grass. Mounds are breached by spade-clawed swipe. Aardvark's tongue is a termite scoop. Trot to burrow as sun comes up, thick tail trailing, bending grass. Abandoned mound under night's dark wing, dawn uncoils with a flickering tongue. Hyrax flees from poison fang, mamba wends through whispering grass. Stalk-legged raptor, keen-eyed stroll, scans for scurry, slither, or crawl. Secretary bird wields claw and bill, mamba whips from cloak of grass. Daring jackals, sly and fast, scavenge hunt and rarely rest. Frogs, fruit, carrion, no meal missed. Dik-dik fawn hides in the grass. Gazelle herds grazing, striped tails flick, tense, alert to cheetah's mark. Patient predator built to streak, dappled earth patches in tawny grass. Hang-gliding vultures, mid-air dives, cackling scrum lures hyena thieves. Strong jaws leave only horns and hooves. Hungry cheetah fades into grass. Plains rolled clean of animal scat, buried in tunneled nesting spot. Aerating soil and feeding root, dung beetle tills its garden of grass. Monsoon winds shift, plains grazing is done. Herds move westward once again. Columns swell, drawn to distant rain, weaving like smoke through stone-dry grass. Hoofprints linger in sleeping grass. And that's the end of the book. Thank you very much. I'm going to end my screen share.
Leslie, thank you.
My pleasure.
Our second poet this evening is Marilyn Nelson. Marilyn Nelson is the author or translator of 17 poetry books and the memoir How I Discovered Poetry. She is also the author of Fields of Praise, New and Selected Poems, which won the 1998 Poets Prize. Carver, A Life in Poems, which won the 2001 Boston Globe Hornbook Award and the Flora Stieglitz-Strauss Award, and Fortune's Bones, which was a Coretta Scott King Honor Book and won the Lion and Unicorn Award for Excellence in North American Poetry. Nelson's honors include 2 NEA Creative Writing Fellowships, the 1990 Connecticut Arts Award, the Fulbright Teaching Fellowship, a fellowship from the J.S. Guggenheim Memorial Foundation, and the Frost Medal. She was the Poet Laureate of the state of Connecticut from 2001 to 2006. And I need to mention that this wonderful book and this wonderful book came out since the first of the year. So way to go, Marilyn. They're both amazing books. So let me bring Marilyn off the floor, there you are. Invite onto the screen. It usually takes just a sec or two. But while Marilyn's coming onto the screen, I want to remind you we have one round robin at the end where we hear everybody say one poem or one thing at the end, should they choose to. Marilyn is coming onto the screen. Technology. Here we go. Welcome, Marilyn. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. Let me make sure my other communications devices are turned off. This is to be about 5 minutes, I think, Alice.
You're welcome to read 8 to 10 should you choose.
Okay.
And then save one for the end.
Okay. I thought now I'll read a few books from this Augusta Savage book, and then at the end I'll read something from the A is for Oboe. Amazing to have two books in the same month. It was probably a mistake. I'm not quite sure how it happened. This is a biography in poems of a woman named Augusta Savage. Her second marriage gave her the last name Savage, and although she was divorced from Mr. Savage, she kept his name, and I think I understand why. What a great name, Savage. She started, she's born in 1890s. I'm sorry, I haven't memorized her dates. In Florida, in a very small town in Florida. Her father was an itinerant preacher who believed that making art is a sin. Augusta, from a very early age, started making little figurines out of clay that she found in the yard, just mud pies, but they were recognizably creatures. And her father beat her for making these little clay figurines. Every time he found some of her someday to become sculptures, he beat her. And so her first memories were of being beaten for making art. So this poem is called Wildfire. The child made tiny somethings from pinches of the clay she found right in the backyard. Enough ducklings for a duckling parade, enough little bunnies and mice to bring the other children to squeals of delight. A large family of small laughing pigs, banjo playing, fiddling, cake-walking dogs. But the God of her father sent Moses down from the mountain with that "thou shalt not" against making images. Her father's fear of his God drove him to search for her secret hiding places, to cut switches, to beat the living daylights of art's sin out of her. A man beating back wildfire. Later in her life, Augusta Savage said that she almost had the art beaten out of her. Well, when she was a teenager, she made a sculpture of the Virgin Mary, Virgin and Child. And when her father saw that, he realized that she was making art, that it wasn't idolatry, it was art. And from that point, he stopped beating her. In her 20s, the Harlem Renaissance was going on, and it's a long story, she wound up going to Harlem to be a part of the Harlem Renaissance, the gathering of Black artists from really all over the world who came to Harlem as if it were a mecca for Black artists. And Augusta joined the movement to Harlem, and she had good luck and bad luck. This is a poem about some of her bad luck in Harlem. 1926, she applied for a fellowship to study art in Europe, which was what everybody wanted to do. It's called the Rome Fellowship. Dr. Du Bois fought for me. He arranged a fellowship for me to go to Rome for a whole year, fully paid for, except for the ocean liner to Italy. The traditional bait and switch most Negroes live. That's why our people had to invent the blues. How was I supposed to pay for the ticket? I was still reeling when a hurricane destroyed my family's house in West Palm Beach. Mama and Papa, Irene, and my last born sisters and brother were left homeless. They came to Harlem, to my one bedroom. The joyful family reunion, Papa's stroke, the hospital, his paralysis, the bills. Lord, you keep telling the ironic joke of Job. The hours of sweating in a steam laundry to make ends meet. Awake, surrounded by the wall-to-wall breathing of those I love the most in all the world, I almost laugh. You made an artist a woman and black? Okay. The turning point for her was a small sculpture of one of her nephews when they were, when the family was living with her. She had, I think, 13 brothers and sisters, and they're all in her one-bedroom apartment. Okay, she made this little. I'm sorry, I don't have screen share. Here's a tiny picture of the sculpture called Gammon, 1929. Art invents materials, media where there are none. Poems written in matchbooks, sculptures of paper mache. Time to create art stolen in miniature increments, a few minutes here or there to create one true gesture, one movement toward truth. My gammon, spit an image of my nephew Ellis, who sleeps under the table and has affected a hip strut since he arrived in New York. No longer a small town boy, he's wised up. He cocks his head, pulls his cap's bill down to one side, lifts his collar, looks with a bemused, level gaze at the ridiculous and cruel stupidity this world abounds in. 14 going on 40, his lips half curved, knowingly. Gammon turned my tide. The Crisis, the official magazine of the NAACP, made Gammon its cover. And like a falling line of good luck dominoes, connected people saw it and told people with money. The Julius Rosenwald Fund presented me with a check. My family gave its blessing, and now I'm in Montparnasse, the left bank of the Seine, in the 14th arrondissement. I'm here studying sculpture at the Académie de la Grande Chaumière. I'm in Paris, censored France. I'm not sure how long I've been reading because I didn't think to look at the clock.
We can take one more.
One more, okay. I'll read this one. It's called A Head of John Henry. It's another sculpture. This book is illustrated, obviously, by photographs of her and her circle and her sculpture. So this is Head of John Henry, which was made in 1940. How to suggest nappy hair without forming every curl. The forehead so much easier. High, broad, smooth, it reflects light. Eyebrow to eyebrow, large irised eye to dark eye. Nestle over the cheekbones. Someone might catch from the tip of John Henry's straight-bridged nose a glimpse into his future. Wide, symmetrical nostrils, full lips, shapely Cupid's bow, a square jawline, a firm chin, head held proudly high. John Henry stands on the brink of Negro manhood when a boy's beautiful life becomes endangered. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Marilyn. Just save one for the end, please. Our third guest is Gail Carson Levine. Gail Carson Levine's first book for children, Ella Enchanted, was a Newbery Honor book. Levine's other books include Ever, a New York Times bestseller, Fairest, a Best Book of the Year for Publishers Weekly and School Library Journal, and a New York Times bestseller, Dave at Night, an ALA notable book and best book for young adults. The Wish, Two Princesses of Bamar, A Tale of Two Castles, and the Six Princess books. She is also the author of nonfiction books Writing Magic, Creating Stories That Fly, and Writer to Writer from Think to Ink, as well as the picture books Betsy Who Cried Wolf and Betsy's Red Hoodie. She is a book of poetry for adults, Transient. Gail Carson Levine and her husband Dave live in a 2-centuries-old farmhouse in the Hudson Valley of New York State. Please welcome to the screen, Gail Carson Levine. Let me drag you up on screen here, Gail.
Thank you, Alice.
Hey.
Thank you for doing this. Whoops. And thank you everyone for being here. The first poem reflects a feeling I've had for about the past 5 years. Though I am home, I think I want to go home. Lumpy with blankets, looking in the dark like a bulging monster, my sister sleeps across the room. I don't dare bother Mommy and Daddy with my fear. Calling myself brave, I wake my sister, who is kind to me only in the middle of the night. She tells me to go back to sleep, which I do the instant I hear her human voice. My husband is playing the piano. The dog is in the yard, but there is where I'd like to be, an understood place that seemed eternal. In the kitchen, Mommy sits at the oval table, her new ballpoint pen whispering on a lined pad as she copies in mirror writing Belgium's entry in my Britannica Junior. She's already finished the A's. The ceiling light casts a yellow glow on her bent head and the tendons in her neck. Hanging above the pots and pans cabinet, the rooster clock ticks loudly. She thinks how she doesn't hear it during the day. Daddy is awake too, but he's in bed counting sheep, giving each sheep its own face, smiling in its own way, toothily or not, lopsided or even. He's performing himself for himself, as he does for everyone else. He knows better than to join Mommy in the kitchen, though by now he wants to spoon instant coffee into a cup and cede sleeplessness its win. Neither one thinks about me. Lament. Heaped on lawns, an extravagance of diamonds. It's a fairy tale night. Tiny ice-glazed leaves of the boxwood bush twinkle at pin-tip stars. My boot cleats clatter on asphalt. A dozen princesses in silk dancing slippers drift along the road and foam around me. And Reggie. I'm glad he can be here. Taffeta brushes my parka. My nose fills with lilac perfume. Ahead, the frozen lake booms as currents move below the ice. A wind picks up, moaning the trees. The 10:05 to New York hoots in the distance. Reggie howls, his back legs trembling. A princess scat sings the notes, lingering longest with him. He whines as she fades out. When I hear again, I regret the part my ears couldn't catch. We reach the park by the lake. The princesses pull back their shoulders and lift, their cloaks a curtain rising over the chain-link fence and lightly settling. Slanting sails cut the sky, each ice boat princely helmed. The princesses spring aboard. The wind reverses, the royals recede. Reggie and I begin the uphill home, going slow. I think of the pills I'll give him when we get there. Near the house, he rolls, making a snow hollow. This will be his last winter. I miss him even now as he slips, standing up. Really, a false messiah who believed most sincerely in himself bought a big fish, dressed it like a baby, rouged its cheeks, and put it in a cradle. Artemis caused a calm and wouldn't blow the wind until a girl was sacrificed. Medieval dogs were branded with a red-hot key of St. Hubert to prevent rabies. I tell children to ask what if. The kitchen table legs come to life and end in human feet. The family cat drifts through the sky above the backyard, its shadow darkening the grass. But nothing is more surprising than reality, really. The birds in our maple trees cawing their iams, piss-you, piss-you, the sweet bite of an onion, the words I make when I type. Ode to History and Its Keepers. The archaeologists who discovered the mummy of the Amazon woman buried with her horse, wearing her gold breastplate, skin-tight pants, and leopard skin cape. Herodotus, in the 5th century BCE, who wrote of Theseus and Antiope that no woman can be abducted unless she wants to be. David Gitlitz, who discovered in the records of the Spanish Inquisition the recipe for Hernando de Soria's lamb pies. The fashion designers of the ancient Greek peplos, the Elizabethan collar, the empire waist, my camouflage jacket with its faux pearl buttons. the museum curators who direct our attention to the rosary bead in the cloisters with the town carved inside, including the cobbler resoling a boot, the loggers who count tree rings, the masons who chiseled the roll call of birth and death in the cemetery gliding past my train window, the family friends who took photos of my parents smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower, the journalists of the moments that make time divide, Lincoln's assassination, Kennedy's, MLK's, Watergate, the Twin Towers, now. And this is a poem with a complicated rhyme scheme. Look out, Guzzle. On a brown winter day, a blue spruce pleases my eyes. Sharp wind and needles, the scene not merely in my eyes. The weather is cold when the daffodil spears punch through, then get buried in snow. Spring comes to be in my eyes. April, forsythia east, daffodils north, quince west, pear blossoms south. Early flowers steering my eyes. When I used to paint landscape, I'd close one eye to make a picture of what was still alive, teaching my eyes. The fall sky is the violet of the veins in my old hands, raised and serpentine, seen by the spring green of my eyes. Gail, Abigail in Hebrew, means Father rejoices. Joy lives in my outlook, not what I see through my eyes. My father's final words to me were, Gail, you're a joy. I'd beaten him at cards, my victory in his eyes. So Alice, I was supposed to say when I was done, but I'm done. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Gail. Our fourth guest is Alan Katz. Alan Katz has been a print and television comedy writer for more than 20 years. In addition to being a multiple Emmy nominee for his work on The Rosie O'Donnell Show and Disney's Raw Tunage, he has written for children's programming on Nickelodeon, ABC Television, Warner Brothers, Animation Tasmania, and many others. Alan is the author of several adult humor books, humorous essays for the New York Times and other publications, and books for young readers. A favorite of the stores happens to be this one. His most recent titles include the latest in the series of the SOS Society of Substitutes and the Elf Academy. One book that we ought to mention that I happen to be out of is Misty the Cloud, The Very Stormy Day, which he co-wrote with Dylan Dreyer. Please welcome to the screen, Alan Katz. And let me find you in the, there you are. I'm inviting you to the screen. There you are, Alan.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with so many wonderful poets and a whole bunch of poetry lovers. And it's my real hope that after I finish reading, you'll all still be poetry lovers. Now, my poems are short, so I want to tell you just a couple of quick stories that I think are pretty fascinating. And I've heard them before, so I know they're fascinating. I was not cut out to be a poet. I was actually, as you heard from Alice, a comedy writer and a songwriter. I wrote like 1,000 funny songs for The Rosie Show. And that led to a book called Take Me Out of the Bathtub and Other Silly Dilly Songs, and actually 8 other silly dilly song books. And one day the editor said, how about writing a poetry book? And I said, nope, you got the wrong guy, because I don't know poetry. My wife, Rose Horowitz, is a very gifted poet, but I'm not a poet. And she said, well, you can try. And I tried 5 poems and I liked it. And they liked it, and I'm very proud to say that became the book Oops, illustrated by the incredible Edward Corrin. He also illustrated the book that Alice held up. And I learned, wait a minute, I can be a poet. And what I tell kids in school visits is, if I can be a poet, you can be a poet. And it awakens some things in them. Now, the first poem, my poems are short, so I'm going to go through a whole bunch. The very first one is the first poem in the book. We were sitting in our kitchen, my wife and I looked out the window and I said, wow, the wind is blowing quite a breeze. And she said, yeah, it's a windy day. What do you want? And I said, well, let me write that down. Maybe that could be the first line in a poem. Now, I challenge kids with that all the time. I say, okay, the first line is the wind is blowing quite a breeze. Somebody comes up with the wind is blowing quite a breeze. It's so cold that I might freeze. And that's a winter poem. Or look out, there's a swarm of bees. And that's a picnic poem. And on and on. And I prove to kids something goes on and they say, wait, I can be a poet. Here's how I finish the poem. And it's going to set the tone for everything else I'm about to read. It's called Whoosh. The wind is blowing quite a breeze. The wind is blowing on my knees. The wind is blowing its spring dance. It tells me I forgot my pants. Yeah, well. Here's a poem called The Lollipop, the shortest, simplest poem you're ever going to hear. It has 2 words and one of them repeats. I have gotten 500 parodies of this poem because it's kind of a parody to begin with. Kids have written poems and sent them to me with their own version of this. The Lollipop. Lick, 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 lick. Lick, 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 lick. Lick, 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 stick. After all those licks, what do you have left? Well, they write the ice cream cone. Lick, 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 plop. I love that so much. Some other poems. This one's called Shh. Please don't bang or slam or buzz. And please, no loud banshee. Do not click and do not clunk. I'm automata peeing. Okay. This is called Everybody Calm Down. Played with words a little bit. The English teacher was in pain while teaching punctuation. He had to end the period with pain and aggravation. My stomach hurts, he said in quotes. I think it's really swollen. He dashed for surgery, and now he has a semicolon. It's really funny with nobody laughing. I hope you're laughing somewhere. This is called Ready for College. Don't taste paste. Don't chew glue. I learned so much on the first day of school. What could I possibly learn on day 2? This is about all the devices we have at home. And by the way, these poems that I'm reading are in Oops and in the other book, poems I wrote when no one was looking. Mommy's downloading music. Daddy's downloading pics. Sister's downloading homework. Brother's downloading flicks. Grandma's downloading health forms. And I have a really big hunch. They're all so busy on their computers, no one's free to download me lunch. This actually happened. One of our 4 kids came home and said, everybody called me a tattletale. And I said, if that happens again, you tell the teacher. Well, listen, nothing in my kids' lives is not usable in my work, whether it's poetry or songbooks or whatever. So whose side are you on became, the kids all call me tattletale, a blabbing, crabbing creature. And if they do it one more time, I'm going to tell the teacher. Just a few more. This is called Check, Please. I only eat foods that begin with CH, like chicken and churros and chili. If you're cooking dinner and there's no CH, then trying to feed me is silly. Today I had chocolate and chickpeas and chips, chimichangas and chow mein and cheese. Tonight, chunky chowder is the only choice. Mom is out of CH recipes. She bought a new cookbook, and starting tomorrow, Mom promised great food she'll be making. It will be a menu of new CH treats, like cha-meatloaf, cha-omelets, and cha-bacon. Okay. Played with words here, too. This is called Stay Tuned. I wish I could accordion a really good accordion. Each time I play accordion, the people would applaudion. Or maybe someday I could pianist, a famous solo pianist. Or maybe play a ponica, a beautiful harmonica. Until then, I'm afraid-o, I'll have to play the radio. This is called 101 Donations. If you have prosperity, it's nice to give to charity. A cent, a buck, a 10, a mill. Give what you can, give what you will. If those who have help those who've not, then those who've not will have a lot. And if the ones who had then lacked, the ones who got can give some back. Couple of new poems, working on a book about books. And this is called Who Needs Sandwiches? I have not read this out loud yet. I wrote it, but I haven't read it. Grab a sandwich, grab a book. With both in hand, you'll find the sandwich feeds your tummy while the book will feed your mind. Keep munching and keep reading. Finish both, my friends, and then the sandwich will be gone for good. The book's there to read again. I'll say it far, I'll say it wide, and to the birds I'll chirp. I'd rather read all day than eat. Plus, books don't make you burp. Last poem I'd like to read. This is called, You Can Read This in a Kayak. I am fascinated by palindromes. And I was talking about palindromes with a student one day, said, I have no idea what that is. So I wrote a poem, and I'm going to hold up a couple of cards to show you the palindromes, or many of the palindromes in this poem. Mom, Dad, Hannah, Eve, sorry, I'm going to start over. Mom, Dad, Hannah, Eve, Otto, L. But sorry, Steve, you don't fit inside this poem. Excuse me. Because your name's not a palindrome. A palindrome, what's a palindrome? It's a, I'm sorry. A palindrome, what's a palindrome? It's when a word's the same forward and back. It can even be a phrase that reads the same both ways. Now get ready for a palindrome attack. A nut for a jar of tuna. Backwards is a nut for a jar of tuna. Go hang a salami. I'm a lasagna hog. Again. Never, odd, or even. Yo, banana boy. Was it a cat I saw? And there are many, many more. Race car is a palindrome. And so is Bob. Ask him. If you need more, please don't call me. I will be at my gym. Backwards and forwards. So that's the Alan Katz portion of this evening. I thank you so much for including me tonight, Alice, and thank you to everybody who loves poetry as much as you do. And thank you, Alice. I think your store and the things you do for readers are amazing, and I salute you and I thank you for
Thank you,
everything
Alan.
you
Please
do.
stay tuned for the round robin at the end. Our fifth guest is Susan Hood. Susan Hood is the award-winning author of many picture books for young readers, including The Last Straw, Kids vs. Plastic, Ada's Violin, Shaking Things Up, 14 Young Women Who Changed the World, and Titan and the Wild Boars, the true cave rescue of the Thai soccer team. Susan is the recipient of the E.B. White Honor Award, the Christopher Award, the Americas Award, the International Latino Award, and the Bank Street Florist Stieglitz Strauss Award, given to a distinguished work of nonfiction that serves as an inspiration to young people. In 2018, Susan published her first middle grade novel, Lifeboat 12, which won the 2019 SCBWI Golden Kite Award for middle grade fiction and is now nominated for many state awards. Her newest book, Alias Anna, A True Story of Outwitting the Nazis, arrives in bookstores in 10 days. Welcome to the screen, Susan Hood. Let me find you here, Susan. There we go. Let the technology catch up a little.
Hello, everyone.
There you go.
So much for having me. And thank you, Alice, for doing this night. I'm enjoying it so much myself. Since it's Women's History Month, I thought I would read poems from Shaking Things Up. This book was a total joy to work on. I got to work with a baker's dozen of incredible women artists. And I wrote this book the year my first granddaughter was born because I kind of wanted her to grow up knowing about all the incredible young women out there. The first poem I'm going to read is called Buried Treasure. It's about Mary Anning with art by Hadley Hooper. And there's a little bit of bio about each person at the bottom, so I'll read that first. Penniless after her father's death, Mary Anning combed England's coast, selling fossils to tourists. While her brother spotted a skull in 1811, it was 13-year-old Mary who unearthed the prehistoric sea reptile, an ichthyosaur, in 1812. Later, she discovered the first two complete plesiosaurs and pterosaurs, laying the foundation for Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. The poem, as you can see, is a shape poem in the shape of the ichthyosaur. It's called Buried Treasure. A jaw, mouth, eye holes, a long skull. What could it be? Mary dug and drilled, uncovering snake stones, layers of limestone, and crocodile teeth, fossils sold to save her family from starving. Patiently, persistently, she chipped and chiseled the skull, detecting a backbone blown bare in a storm. Day after day, she carved, millions of years melting away, revealing ribs, a spine, etching the earth's past in the cliffs. She worked unearthing fabulous flippers like a dolphin's and a long tail, an ichthyosaur. The next poem I wanted to read is about Annette Kellerman, who's a champion athlete and inventor of the modern swimsuit, with art by Emily Winfield Martin. And because Annette was somewhat scandalous in her day, I decided to write a limerick about her. But here's a little bio about her. Australian Annette Kellerman wore braces on her legs as a child, possibly due to rickets. Her doctor suggested swimming to strengthen her leg muscles. She went on to win world records, perform daredevil diving stunts, and star in silent films, popularizing a new one-piece bathing suit and ushering in a new age of athleticism for women. So there's the limerick, Turning the Tide. There once was a mermaid queen, lovely and lithesome and lean, who swam afternoons without pantaloons. Her swimsuit was deemed obscene. The lady was quickly arrested. Unafraid, she calmly protested. Who can swim 50 laps wearing corsets and caps? Her statement could not be contested. She streamlined the suit of the day and invented our water ballet. By changing the fashions, she fueled swimming passions as women made waves in the spray. Next, I would like to read to you about Mae Jemison, who is the first female African-American astronaut, with gorgeous art by Isabel Rojas. Mae Jemison always said that she was irritated there were no women astronauts. She skipped 7th grade, started high school at age 12, later earned a degree in medicine, and in 1987 was chosen for NASA's space program. When the Space Shuttle Endeavour launched in 1992, she was one of 7 astronauts on board. So this poem is called Liftoff. An African proverb says, no one shows a child the sky. No need. Head back, it's there in her eyes. Glittering stars, swirling galaxies, fill her, thrill her. Even though her kindergarten teacher says, you want to be a scientist? Don't you mean a nurse? Even though she's a scaredy cat. Afraid of the dark, she looks up. Afraid of heights, she looks down. She skins her shins and muddies her dress because she needs to know. A Wrinkle in Time and Star Trek's Uhura say women can be scientists, even rocket scientists. Ignition. All systems are go. 3, 2, 1, blast off. And then the last poem I wanted to read to you is about Maya Lin, who's the architect and sculptor of the Vietnam Memorial. This art is by Julie Moorstock. Maya Lin won the blind design competition unanimously, despite more than 1,400 entries that included the work of top architects. But when Lin's heritage, age, and gender were revealed, she had to appear before Congress to defend her vision. Today, her memorial is visited by more than 3 million people each year. The poem is called A New Vision. In 1981, entry 1026 won a competition to build a memorial to the fallen soldiers of Vietnam, a controversial 20-year war where so many had died. When Maya Lin's name was revealed, some were outraged that someone so young, just 21, someone Asian American, someone female, had bested the best architects to honor men killed in Vietnam in a war we had not won. Maya's design was not perched high in a pedestal, but carved into the ground, a long walk down into the earth and then back out again. I imagined taking a knife and cutting into the earth, she said. Like war, it would create a wound that would heal with time, but leave a scar. Maya's design showed not a face or two, but more than 58,000 names, spelling out one by one just how many were lost. It was not made of traditional pure white marble, but black as night granite. Maya Lin knew that polished to a high shine, black granite is a mirror for those who have come to reflect those present who gaze into the past. After all, what should a war memorial do? Unearth memory, make us cry, see ourselves, and then lead us back up into hope, into the light. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. Oops. Our sixth and final poet for the evening is Bethel's new poet laureate, Rick Magee. Rick Magee is a native Californian, received his BA in English from the University of California at Berkeley and his MA from California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo. He moved to New York to conclude his graduate studies and received his PhD from Fordham University in 2002 for his dissertation, Sentimental Ecology, Susan Fenimore Cooper, and the New Model of Eco-Criticism. He joined the Sacred Heart faculty in 2003. His research interests include 19th century American literature, especially sentimental lit and eco-criticism. He has published articles on Cooper, ecofeminism, and food writing, and he edited a reprint of Cooper's only novel, Eleanor Wiley's, in his free time. Rick is an avid outdoorsman and competitive cyclist, and he ranked in the top 10 in local cycling competition. He is currently Bethel's second poet laureate. Please welcome to the screen, Rick Magee. Let me find you here, Rick. Woohoo.
Here I am. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Alice, for doing this, and thank everybody for being here and everybody who's gone before. I started writing poetry when I was 9, and I got my first rejection from Highlights magazine, and I still have that letter. And I wrote poetry up until graduate school, and I had to write stuff like this. I got promoted to full professor and didn't have to write that anymore, and I've gone back to writing poetry, and it feels a lot like going home. Since it's almost St. Patrick's Day, Sacred Heart, where I teach, has a campus in Dingle on the west coast of Ireland, and I teach there whenever I can convince them to let me do that. So I have a bunch of poems about Ireland, so I'll do that. I'll do some of those, but I'm going to stay true to my California roots and start with a poem called Sand Dollar Beach. Sand Dollar Beach is a beach a little bit north of the San Luis Obispo, Monterey County line. So Sand Dollar Beach. Warm, late May air is soft, but heavy with scents of black sage and cypress. The sticky smell of Monterey pine whispers in the breeze slipping off the Pacific. Monarchs and buckeyes caress lupins, poppies, and silverweed. The path winds through a patch of live oaks, whose dark, dusky air provides a bass note to the little sonata. At the cliff, the path drops and twists through chunks of serpentinite and drifts of reddish dirt. Bitter, green-smelling monkey flower bushes overhang. A tiny rill giggles over rounded jade and moonstone. Pea kelp pops wetly when I leap on it, but the whip of bull kelp is too tough. Instead, I drag it like a dinosaur tail past hissing foam and drop it as cold waves shock my ankles. I look down at the water pulling back out to sea, see the million pebbles, sand grains, and shells cartwheeling. The water's movement dizzies me, and the world tilts and shimmers. I look up. Sunlight paints the Pacific, and gulls mark chalky crosses on the sky. Broken boulders, a continent's last gasp, curve to the south, and I feel embraced in a perfect bubble until it is time to climb back up and go home. I'm going to type something in the comments here because it's a weird Irish spelling. Okay, so the thing I just put in there is Guy Bolga, and there should be a fada over the A, but I don't know how to do that. Guy Bolga is a mythical spear. It's a magical weapon that was given to the hero of Irish, the Ulster cycle stories, Cuchulainn. And it's a magical spear and can kill anybody. And he accidentally unknowingly kills his son with it, and he gets so distraught that he fights the waves and tries to battle them until he falls exhausted. And if you know Yeats, Yeats wrote a poem about that, and I mention that because I blatantly stole a little phrase from Yeats's poem for this. So this is called Guy Bolga. The stick is easily 3 times his height, but it fits well in his hands. As the waves recede, he chases them with his lance held high, striking at the water with a fierce battle cry. When the waves return, he flees, shrieking, to stand on dry sand. The waves today resemble small, docile ponies more than horses of the sea. He chases and retreats endlessly, shouts and laughs harmonizing. Water sprays from the stick as he swings it, and the droplets hang in the air prismatically. Finally, the small hero tires, his pants saltwater soaked. He wants to take the stick with us. It is a great stick, he insists. It makes a great thwack on the waves. I agree that it is the grand stick of the world, but it will not fit in our car, and sure, the airline will balk if we try to carry it aboard. I think, too, of the drifts of sand already collected on the floor mats that someone at the car rental office in Dublin will have to clean. We decide the stick must go back to the sea, so we toss it high and leap when it splashes down. The last we see of it, it is drifting towards Skellig. All right, so I mentioned Yeats, and I have a poem about Yeats. I visited the church where he's buried, and on the tombstone, he wrote his own epitaph for the tombstone, which is a pretty cool thing to do, I think. But the tombstone reads, "Cast a cold eye on life, on death, horsemen pass by." So that's what it says there. So my poem is called "Upon Seeing Yeats' Grave." Despite the signs in Irish and English, I almost missed the turn off the N15. So taken was I by the sight of Ben Bulben in the great distance, looking so much like it is supposed to that it looks unreal. The big dark slab stands beside the church. The gilding inside the engraved letters is worn from other pilgrims who thought ahead and brought flowing sheets of paper and chalk for tombstone rubbings. I just stand and cast my eye upon the grave. I do not have to wonder what Yeats would say today, for his words haunt a century later and still tell the immutable truth that the center does not hold, and the worst squawk out their passionate intensity like the gray-black rooks in the leafless trees above me. The horseman does not pass by, but stands and waits silently, expectantly, as we shred our inherited finery and use the rags to staunch the wounds we inflict upon ourselves. The horseman waits and carries off limp bodies, children's bodies, brown bodies, women's bodies, hopeful and hopeless bodies, and tosses them upon the pyre of our reckoning. So this morning I was wondering what poems I was going to read, and I was taking my dog for a walk in Huntington Park, and I passed another walker with her dog, and she said, "It's a great day for a walk." And I thought, I actually have a poem called "A Fine Day for a Walk." So I took that as a sign from that walker. So whoever you are, thank you. So this is also about Dingle, which is on the west coast of Ireland in County Kerry. People like to say that it's the last parish before Boston. And the last time I was there was January of 2019, and it was typical January with drizzly rain and 40 degrees. And one day it was just absolutely perfectly sunny. So this is that day. Fine day for a walk. The sky looks naked without its woolly jumper. The harbor is a sheet pulled tight without the unruly fingers of the wind rumpling the water in ecstatic wrinkles. Strangers on Strand Street stop each other to wonder at the weather. Fine day for a walk, we all agree. The muddy path remembers the rain. Dogs dash up in gyrating greetings. Cows stare defiantly at me as another invader marching on the turf. The climb past the lighthouse reveals a curtain that conceals the beach below, but the rumble of waves weaves through the fog bank. I stand on the promontory, fog bank on my left, sunshine on my right. By tilting my head, I can see the sun eye-wateringly bright, or a burnished bronze coin. The cool tongues of fog lick at my ears, and I walk on into the clouds. Thank you very much. Alice, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Rick. Just to let you know, what we're going to do now is a round robin so that we end with one poem from each of these poets, as long as I can pull it off technologically. There may be a little bit of a delay. But before we go, because I want to end with Rick at the end again, and then we'll say, and that'll be good night. I want to thank Leslie, Marilyn, Gail, Alan, Susan, and Rick for sharing their work with us and for participating in our first night of poetry in a very long time. And to each of every one of you who tuned in tonight, thank you for joining us. Please don't forget to go to Byrd's Book Spring Poetry Series page, where you can see the upcoming episodes and maybe purchase a book or two by these wonderful authors. So I'm going to start with Leslie, and I need to find you, Leslie. So and invite you back on for one last poem.
There I am. Hi, thank you so much, Alice, again. This has been fabulous. So wonderful to hear everybody's poetry. So now I'm going to share something from the book that you held up, Spy Coup, A Clutter of Short Verse on 8 Legs. It's a collection of very short poems about how spiders solve the problems of spider daily living. And I love to write poems with 2 voices. So this is a poem for 2 voices. And I have visual aids. So this is the feather-legged orb weaver and the hummingbird. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So you can see that little spider right there. That's the feather-legged orb weaver who says, "Now where's that gnat I caught today? I stole it, ziplet, flew away. And now I'm back for silky fluff, your woolly, catchy, stretchy stuff to make my cup nest snug enough. But I don't trap and spin for you. That's how I make my living. Tough." That's it. Thank you so much.
We're getting there.
Thanks again, everybody, for coming. So much fun.
There's always a little technological lag. Hang on just a sec.
That's okay.
Hopefully Marilyn's right up here.
I'm sure she'll be coming. I'll show Robert McGank's fabulous cover while we're waiting. There's a lot of spiders on here. This is a favorite, the peacock spider. This is spiders we all have in our basements.
I
don't know.
Well, we may be having a little bit of a technical problem, but I will go ahead and move on to Gail and then minimize. Let me find Gail. There's 2 Gails. That's why I got confused. Sorry, folks.
I'm laughing at what people are saying about spiders in the chat.
Don't blame them.
Oh, come on. Spiders are great. They do good work for us.
I understand. Thanks, Marilyn. Sorry about the technical problems.
Oh, well, there I am.
Here you are.
Is everything working then?
Everything is working then. We'd love a poem from you.
Okay. I'm going to end with the last poem in this other book. A is for oboe. The orchestra's alphabet, which is co-authored with me and Lara Auerbach, who is a Russian classical composer and a concert pianist, and also known as a poet in Russia. And she's suffering terribly right now because much of her childhood was in Ukraine. But we won't go into that. So this is the last poem from A is for oboe, which is an alphabet about the orchestra, the instruments, the people involved, the experience of listening to orchestral music, and so on. It's a picture book illustrated beautifully by Paul Hoppe, but it's intended for readers of all ages. So this is the last one, the Z. You can maybe see the illustration. Z. The concert's over. After the finale, after the soloists and the conductor's bows, the standing, clapping audience shouting, "Bravo!" After we've all left the concert hall, everyone still exultant and aglow, musicians and music lovers go home. There is a brief twittering in our nests, and then, polyphonically, we sleep the song of Z's.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thanks.
Hi. So my poem is about a subject that astonishingly has not come up. And it's a prose poem. COVID-19 in literature, mythology, and folklore. Snow White, with the apple stuck in her throat, didn't take in a significant viral load. Beth succumbed quickly, giving the March family a sad Christmas. The hedge kept Sleeping Beauty safe. The ogre caught it when he jumped species to lion, passing through bat. Jane Eyre defied a travel ban when she journeyed to reunite with Rochester. The funeral for Hercules' first wife was a super spreader event. After Charles died, Emma Bovary found happiness as a reader to the blind. Rumpelstiltskin had to quarantine and couldn't help the miller's daughter, who was executed by a firing squad. Elizabeth, Jane, Darcy, and Bingley self-isolated. The ball was called off. The first little pig wouldn't wear a mask. The second left it below his nose. The third refused to let his brothers in his brick house. No one could inoculate Medusa, though she had a pre-existing condition. Hamlet vacillated over taking the vaccine. So thank you so much, and thanks again, Alice.
Of course, Gail, thank you. Help, let me get off screen.
You can stay. We're friends.
Okay.
Oh, okay. By the way, someone put in the comments that there's a creepy dummy back there. That's Jerry. He is 61. He's been with me since I was 4, and leave him alone. I'm going to read a poem. A friend is doing an anthology of poems that all start with if. And he asked me to write a poem that started with if, and I wrote the following poem. And then he sent me an email back that started with if, and it basically said, if that was a good poem, we would have published it. But I do like it, and I hope you'll like it too. I'm going to have to read it from the screen, but I'll do my best to maintain eye contact. If I could have one wish of all, I'd wish for wings. Wings that would fuel me, nourish me, and make my body soar with happiness. Wings would help me take on new challenges. Who knows, after having wings, maybe I could change the world. I think about having wings when I wake up. I think about having wings all day. I think about having wings as I fall asleep. So I say it now and I say it clearly. I would like wings. What's that? You're out of wings? Okay, I'll have the mozzarella sticks. Thank you.
I'm coming, Alan. Sorry about that.
Huh?
Susan, I've invited you on screen. Let me find you. Here you are. Let me leave. Thank you.
Hello again. The last poem I wanted to read is from my brand new book. I just got these hardcover copies in the other day. It's coming out on March 22nd, called Elias Anna. I read it with a co-author named Greg Dawson, who is actually the son of this girl. It's a nonfiction book in verse about two Ukrainian sisters, of all things. Both piano prodigies who are among the only known survivors of Dravitsky Yar. This crime was covered up by the Nazis first, and then later by Stalin. And it was first revealed through poems of protest, notably by Russian poet Yevtushenko. The girl's triumphant true story came to light because of a letter to grandma. So I just wanted to read a little bit of that letter, and then I'll read the poem. So this is a true story from a granddaughter who had a homework assignment to interview her grandmother. She said, "Dear Grandma Z, how are you doing? I hope everything's going well for you. I'm writing this letter for a school history project we're doing. The project is to find out as much as possible about our grandparents and what was going on when they were 13 years old." When Jana was Amy's age, how could she answer her granddaughter? Long buried horrors, stifled sorrows, Jana had pushed away, pushed down, now came rushing up like bile. Rifles, soldiers, the pit in her stomach, shoving, bitter cold, icy stares. Families lined up, little children, grandparents, people laughing, pointing, taking pictures. Humiliation, confusion. What had they done? Where were they going? A bribe, a whisper, running, 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 escape. She had to hide, but where? But how? A new name. She'd hide behind a new identity, that was it. She wouldn't be Jana. She'd use an alias. She'd drop the ZH from her name, become Anna, smaller, plainer, more able to blend in. She'd begin again. A for Anna, A for alive. That's it. Thank you again for having me. It's been a joyful evening. So appreciate it, Alice.
Susan. Rick, I know you're here somewhere. There you go.
Here I am. So I'm going to go back to California for my last poem. I grew up in a little town called Morro Bay. It's right on the coast. And the important thing is that a few years back, the Amgen Tour of California bicycle race had a stage that finished in Morro Bay. So, also I like this poem, and I just this week this poem got accepted to a literary magazine, so I'm super happy about that. So I like this twice now. So this is called "Watching the Tour of California." I recognize the hill where the crash happens, flattened by the helicopter camera perspective. From above, it looks like a pebble dropped in water, with the golden leader's jersey hitting the asphalt and other riders rippling away to safety in a rainbow of team kits. Just past the right-hand curve and next to the little turnout where birders and photographers park to get their blue herons or coastal sunsets. I used to have to get off my bike to walk that hill, pushing my free spirit. Red, white, and blue with ape-hanger handlebars, the glittery banana seat, and the Uga horn I got for my birthday. Mom and Dad disguised our carless poverty with family bike rides to the park. And let's just stop at the store on the way. One day as we neared that hill, Dad dropped back to ride beside me, grinning. I'll bet you a quarter, he said. You can't ride up that hill without stopping. I yelled in triumph as I crested the top and only realized years later his clever reverse psychology. He handed over the quarter and I contemplated the riches 25 cents could purchase. A Hershey bar I wouldn't have to share, though I probably would. Cylindrical double scoops of thrifty ice cream, mint chip and chocolate. A super bouncy ball from the vending machine. Maybe I'd get lucky and get the swirly one. Or I could add it to the 3 nickels and a dime in my little leather change purse and get a Snoopy paperback the next time Mrs. McCabe hands out the Scholastic book order form. I still ride, though now I'm on black carbon and fancy Italian wheels. But I continue mentally rewarding myself with 25 cents on the toughest hills, and that 20 bucks I once won in a Criterion feels paltry in comparison. On today's ride, I saw a quarter on the road. I stopped to pick it up, but it was one of those newer state quarters, eliminating even the tiniest chance it was the same coin my dad gave me. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much, Alice, again, for organizing this. This was wonderful.
It has been wonderful, and I would like to at least remember to thank every single poem that came across our vistas tonight, and all 6 of you have enriched us, each of us, with your work. I want to thank all of you who came tonight to listen, and please visit the store. We have the works of these poets and others in the store. Thank you again.